Top 10 dungeons in FF1 in the order of difficulty. Also, I'm going to give you tips to get through all of them. So anyway, let's get into it. Number 10, the Waterfall Cavern. You get to this location via the canoe near Onrak. First off, the enemies in the canoe will give you a harder time than the cave itself. This is one of the easiest dungeons in the entire game. The real threat here is the cockatrice enemies and stray gas dragons that you'll fight at this point. Once you get the cube, you can just cast exit if you have a white wizard, so it's easy out. The best advice for this cave, be roughly level 18 or higher. 22 is recommended. Carry some soft potions, healing items, easy. The good news is if you know where you're going, this will be a super quick trip in and out. You won't have to explore the caverns as it's pretty vast. Number 9, the Castle of Ordeals, also known as the Citadel of Trials. This is a laughably short dungeon if you know where to go and if you need to know. I have a walkthrough coming out super soon. If it's not out yet, then you won't see a card, but here it is if it is out now. And this is the very first place you get usable items like the heal staff and the Zeus gauntlet. Some of the enemy formations can be a little rough if you're under-leveled. The mind flayers, also known as sorcerers, their physical attack can auto-kill party members despite your equipment, and the zombie dragons can be rough sometimes. But advice for this place is to be a level 14 or so and carry some healing items. Carrying healing items in FF1 is basic info, so just assume you'll always have to carry them on you through any dungeon on this list. Number 8, the Mirage Tower. This is a huge, sprawling dungeon with a bunch of floors and enemies that attack your full party. There's an absolute ton of treasure here, though. It's a shorter dungeon that leads to another dungeon that's on this list later on. Sometimes, the desert outside can do more damage than this dungeon itself. Not much to say, really. It's essentially a pass-through to the Sky Castle to fight Tiamat, using the cube that's found in the Waterfall Cavern. You can get super good, decent experience, though. Number 7, the Underwater Cavern, or the Sunken Shrine. Now things are starting to ramp up a bit. This is a huge dungeon that can be done in 2 separate parts. Use the exit spell for ease of getting out. There are enemies in this dungeon that can stun and hit super hard, but the experience you gain here is amazing. Fantastic treasures, including some of the best armor in the game, and a ton of gil are just some of the things that you can find in this dungeon. It's essentially a sprawling maze that ends with Kraken, and that kind of makes the dungeon overall more difficult. But I like to use Eye in the Ice Cavern to get to level 25 before going here, and that makes this dungeon super easy. But the Underwater Cavern could be used as a grinding spot also. Just remember to use high-level lit spells in a house between visits and you'll be fine. Number 6, the Earth Cavern. To me, this signifies the point in the game where it speeds up and the entire game sort of opens up for you. It's a huge dungeon with enemies that hit hard. The cockatrice enemy makes its debut here and can turn party members to stone. There are multiple floors that increase in size as it goes on. And also sometimes there are out-of-the-way treasure chests that sometimes aren't worth it. You have to go through this dungeon twice, so there's lots of backtracking and no access to the exit spell yet. The Giant's Hall can 100% add to the difficulty if you don't know that it's coming. And for those of you who don't know, the Giant's Hall is this little section in the Earth Cavern where every step you fight some sort of giant. But you'll go through this whole cave twice, and you'll fight Vampire the first time, which not really a problem. You can one-shot it almost. But then there's Lich, and this first elemental fiend can be a bit rough if you don't know that it's coming and if you're under-leveled. So I like to be at level 12 or 13 before entering and save your spells for the high-level curing and high-level attacking Lich later on. You will feel battered and beaten by the time you see light again, but you'll be just fine. Number 5, the Volcano. I struggled with the placement of this one because sometimes it's easier than the Earth Cavern, and sometimes it's harder, but there is a section that I feel makes this slightly harder than the Earth Cavern. First of all, in the Volcano, there are damage floors on multiple levels, and anytime that you step on these damage floors, it slowly drains your HP, so keep an eye on it. There are super long passages that lead to treasure chests, and a lot of those treasure chests have required fights in front of them, and that's the section that I feel is different, because it's easy to get really confused on where you're going in these long passages, but the treasure is usually pretty good and pretty useful, but some of the treasure rooms and treasure chests are super far away from the main path. The enemies here comes in packs and they attack the entire party, and just like the Earth Cavern, the floors seem to increase as it goes on, and Carrie at the end is not weak against ice, but paralysis. And she can go down pretty quick, but she can hit hard sometimes. So be at level 14 or 15, pick up A-Fire from Elfland, along with a heal spell, and you'll be just fine. Number 4, Sky Castle or the Flying Fortress. I mean, War Mech. That's the big takeaway, but that's just one aspect. The enemies here hit hard and come in packs. Sorcerers make a return, which is never a good time. There are new enemies that can devastate parties. The layout can be confusing at times. almost like a labyrinth. But the adamant item is here, and from that you get the Excalibur weapon, and has a ton of other awesome treasures all throughout this whole dungeon. And then after you get through all that, there's Tiamat, and Tiamat's special attacks can be terrible. She can poison your party, all sorts of stuff, but you can one-hit KO Tiamat, and it's either Break or Bane, I can't remember, one of the two. But if you're at level 25 or higher, stay healed and try to save your magic spells as much as possible for Warmech and Tiamat. Those two things combined, woof. Number 3, the Marsh Cave. I know, the Marsh Cave is tougher than the Sky Castle, believe me, I know it sounds crazy, but the Marsh Cave is the first real challenge of the game, and a lot of new players will just venture over there woefully unprepared, including me. So let's break it down. The wizards at the end are a big deal breakers, the most difficult enemies that you've faced in the game so far, and they can come in a pack somewhere between 2 and 4. But even your normal battles in the Marsh Cave have lots of poison, heavy hitting, and enemies that absorb physical attack. There's a ton of treasure for such an early dungeon. However, some of the chests are empty if you collect them all. FF1 has repeat treasures, so if you get one in another floor, another one later on might be completely empty. There's more steps overall, more fights, not a lot of gil for healing items at this point in the game. But to get through it pretty okay, be at level 7 or 8. Ideally 9, but that can take a really long time. Leveling up via the ship, if you stay around Cornelia and use the cheap inn there. Saving all sorts of money will help with healing items. Use Lit 2 for the wizards, that will help your fight tremendously. Keep a ton of pure potions on you. I find that taking around 12 works well. Maybe 15 or so heal potions. And if you find a scum enemy, you can absolutely freely run from it, and that is a 100% viable tactic because these enemies absorb all of your physical damage. Number 2, the Temple Revisited. This is the final dungeon of the game. Enemies from different points in the game will show up at this point, and they all come in packs. The game is trying to kill you here. There's a ton of experience and gil to be made, and you will get hurt pretty good. There's a ton of floors. They're all maze-like. Different entrances and exits to different rooms. In this dungeon, there's a second round with each elemental fiend, and they're all more difficult, and there's hardly any rewards or no gil after you beat them. The sorcerers are back yet again and can still one-shot kill you, but the best weapon in the game is found here. The Masamune is tucked away on the same floor as Tiamat, but just understand that this game is absolutely throwing everything it has at you, so to get through it pretty decently. Level 25 to 30 makes it way easier. Spend all the money you have maxing out your heal potions and pure potions. Get the highest level spells, including Heal 3, Cure 4, Life 2, those are all essential. And also, Protect Rings and Ribbons are essential too, and use maps if you have to. No one will blame you for using a map. And number 1, the Ice Cavern. Similar to Marsh Cave, if you're not prepared, or even if you are, this dungeon can be terrible. Enemies come in packs and they attack the whole party. I always do this dungeon out of order to get the airship faster, and that makes all the enemies in this dungeon twice as lethal. Damage floors like in the volcanoes exist, but one huge threat in the Ice Cavern is the undead creatures that you'll fight. They can paralyze the whole party and it's game over, and this happens frequently. And all you can do is just watch your party be destroyed and you're completely helpless. The boss Eye at the end can one-shot kill characters, and there's a lot of required fighting chests with literally the weakest armor in it. So you kind of get bamboozled a couple of times. Tips to get through this cave: just get in, get out. I like to just get the 10,000 guild chest and the floater and leave as soon as I can, unless I'm using the eye enemy for grinding, because I always recommend taking time and getting to level 25 with the eye enemy. Use any ice resistant spells and get super used to running from battle. Now, I found a lot of information that's never been seen before during the development of FF1, and it was all thanks to a recently broadcasted show in Japan that I haven't seen anybody else talk about. Click here for that video. I also uncover the potential timeline for the game's development, something you won't find anywhere else. My name is Leonard Phillips, and you've just explored the Returner's Hideout. Love you.